Okay, so welcome to this rather impromptu conversation with Cathy. We are grabbing this opportunity between sessions to talk because I really want to introduce Cathy to our Sasuga podcast listeners, and especially to talk about communication as a speech coach.
Yes.
Because my listeners come from the perspective, for the most part, of being Japanese, and there's a lot of comparison with, oh, we Japanese are not good at presentations, and we think that the other people are so much better at presentations and communication. So what are your thoughts on that stuff?
Well, I have to start by saying that I do a lot of this work around the world, and I often hear about there's the American way of presenting, which is often held up as a good thing. And I often go to countries and say, don't lose what's specific to your culture that's better than the American way. So there's this whole, you have to be authentic to your own culture, and most importantly to who you are.
Yeah.
And so I always say that we get hung up on communication when in reality, you and I both know that it's mostly who you are and how you do it that matters. It's not what you say.
Exactly.
And so this idea that we have a perfect way to communicate is a bit of a myth.
It totally is. I love this. It's so refreshing for me to have someone else's perspective to share as well. Because sometimes people, it's just Helen saying it.
No. Well, I agree with you, Helen.
So we were chatting earlier and you had some fascinating stories about communication experiences. So what is if you talk about a story of, let's start with the embarrassing moments, and it can be your embarrassing moment, it can be someone else's embarrassing moment, but I want to share this because a lot of people, when they're in work situations, when they're presenting, and they may have some kind of embarrassing situation, and they're like, oh no, it's just me, and everybody's looking at me. Well,
I like to say that failure isn't fatal. And because a lot of people come to the stage or the room, wherever they're presenting, and they say, it has to be perfect or else I will be shamed, I will be fired, I will be demoted. And we put this, our own internal voice is not good. And I always say to them, you can survive anything. And I tell my personal story of embarrassment, which is many years ago.
Here we go. Get ready for the juicy, get the popcorn out.
I don't like to shame anybody else, but this is my own misdoing. I was on a stage with a peer, and we were teaching presentation skills. We had an audience of about 200, and as it was his turn to speak, we were on the stage, and he took the front of the stage, and I started to back up, and I went a little too far, and I fell off the stage. So I suddenly disappear from view with a bit of a thump in the background, and he, I think with great presence of mind, said something like, Cathy will be back in just a moment. And I climbed back up with great embarrassment to the stage and said, I'm fine. And I was humiliated that this had happened while I was trying to teach them how to be good presenters. But I had good poise, and I just laughed and said, I'm fine, let's keep going. And later, I stayed humiliated. I just kept persevering. And when people came up at the end of the presentation and said, you did that on purpose. you did that to teach us that we could fall off a stage and I said, no, that was not part of the curriculum. It just happened. But I cherished that moment because it was just not letting it overwhelm me and make me leave the room and not present anymore. It was that ability to say, well, that just happened. Let's go on.
I love that phrase. Well, that just happened. That's a great one to be able to.
Yes.
One of my other favorites is the how fascinating.
Exactly.
Right? Because things happen, and
Yes.
it's not really about the thing that happens, right? It's about how you deal with the thing that happens.
Exactly. And we say this all the time to the people that we coach, which is don't apologize. If you misspeak, you just repeat the right word and you go forward.
Yeah.
You just pause and you take a moment to gather your thoughts and continue, because no one remembers the silences.
Exactly.
They remember your reaction to what's going on. And if you look as if you're confident or you just persevere, I always say it's not about perfection, it's always about connection with the audience with the material.
Yes. This is so great. One of my phrases is, it's all about the audience.
Yes.
So I love that. It's about the connection.
Yes.
It really is.
And may I add something here, because I always say to my clients, when you're nervous, if you're a presenter and you haven't found your mojo yet, and you're up there, the fastest way, when you're nervous, your attention's on yourself.
Exactly.
And so you're sort of, oh my God, what do I look like? What am I saying?
Yeah.
The fastest way to get out of that mindset is to put your attention on somebody in the audience. right? To lean forward and say, do you understand what I'm saying? Is this something that's good for you to understand or hear, or it might be of interest to you? And just that focus that way gets rid of all your nerves.
It is so important where your focus is.
Yes.
And that part about, why am I here and how am I here to help these people? What am I here to convey to these people?
Yes, and to remember you're always in conversation. But a really good presentation is a heightened conversation. It's not a perfectly worded, perfectly delivered. It's just a give and take. Because even if the audience isn't responding to you audibly, they're still talking to you in their own heads.
Exactly.
And that's why we need those moments of pause and reflection, because we're like, oh, that was fascinating. Let me think about that for a second. So we shouldn't just keep barreling ahead as if we're presenting. We should stop and say, how does that sound? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. So a couple of things that have already come to my mind as we've been talking, and I'm going to just say them both so that we can make sure that we address them. One is about the apology, because a lot of the presenters that I have seen in Japan start off their presentation with, "I'm sorry, my English is so bad," right? So there's that one. And then I've forgotten the other one. No, it's like, there you go. It's like, how do you deal with it when you forget something? What was the other one? It'll come back to me. Let's start with that.
The apology. Well, I'm not a big fan of the apology because I feel it puts you into a place of embarrassment and you're doing it to yourself. And so I would suggest if you're I speak a second language and I have presented in my second language, which is a thing of terror if you haven't used it in a long time. I speak French and poorly at this point, but I've done that before, and I always will say something about, you'll probably notice by the way I'm speaking that this is my second language. And so bear with me. If I say something you don't understand, please stop me. And I'll repeat it. And so I offer it as, you're going to notice this, and I get rid of that, them sort of reacting to it, then I own it, and then I say, look, it's just about communication, so if I happen to say the wrong word, we're all going to laugh, and you'll just tell me how to correct it.
Yeah. Well, with languages like English and French, they can't necessarily tell from looking at you that you're probably speaking your non-native language. With Japanese speakers, people often, especially in Japan, will make that assumption that this person is not a native speaker of English.
Yes.
So maybe they don't even have to bring that to the attention. They just go.
There's not really a need to do that.
Right.
I mean, it's perfectly fine to just start and have people. But this is why we do open remarks. This is why we teach people, don't just jump into your content. You come up and you say, hello, I'm Cathy, I'm Helen, and today I'm going to talk. And that has as much of a use for you as the speaker to find your rhythm as for the listener to say, oh, that's the cadence.
Right.
That's what the speaker sounds like. And so that people underestimate the importance of these first things that you say at the beginning of a conversation or a presentation.
Tell us a little bit more about, I remember the other thing, but I might forget it. It was scripts, but we'll come back to it in a moment.
Okay.
Because cadence, tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, for me, cadence, I think of cadence as the soundtrack. And I make a lot of music analogies because I'm a singer and a musician as well. And so the cadence is the pace with which you speak. It's the sound of your voice. It's the music that you make as you speak. Because we forget that there's an elegance to sound that brings people in, and you can make somebody feel soothed, or you can get somebody excited, or you can make yourself look more stately by how you do it. And this artistry of how you use the spoken sound of your voice, not just the words you say, is important.
Yeah, love that. So we've talked, content. There's what people sound like, and then we have the visual, which we can talk about in a moment as well. But let's go to scripts, because I really want to, because I know many of the people I've worked with in the past in Japan, especially, they like to have a script, especially when they're speaking non-native language.
Yes.
And I have my very strong opinions about this, and I'm guessing they may be the same as Cathy's. I would just like to hear from another speech coach
about how to use a script, if to use a script.
Yes, yeah.
So I believe scripts often get in the way, and that we should be very careful about using script. We just had a situation this morning where the team that I was working with had the opportunity to have scripts, and with great delight, most of them said, no, I don't need the script. So I believe in knowing what your story is and knowing the key messages that you want to deliver and rehearsing enough that you have a sense of that storyline and that you know what your conclusion is going to be. So you can always land on message even if you lose everything in between, beginning and end, you land the message. Because this need for perfection is why we bring scripts.
Exactly.
But when you bring a script, you lose the spontaneity, you lose the proper sound of how we speak when we're talking. You sound like you're scripted, which is not a good thing, because nobody wants you to read text to them, because they could read it faster than have it been articulated to them. And it also becomes a bit of a crutch. And we start to feel, if we work too much with a script, we start to feel like, I can't do this without it. And the reality is, you're probably the expert in what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And even if not, you've done enough research for this particular moment in time to be credible. And so just speaking is so much more fun for the listener and the room and whoever and also it should be for the speaker too. But that takes a little bit of practice to get to that level of comfort. But I'm not a big fan, because you and I see them as obstacles more often than not to the real connection.
Yeah, it is, because it's what you talked about earlier, and the all about the audience, the connection with the audience. If you're focusing on your script, if you're actually reading something in front of you, then you're connected with your script, not your audience. And even if you've memorized it, it's in your head, you're doing your best to remember, and you're focusing on yourself.
Yes, it's about energy. And so when you think about communication is an exchange of information, but also of energy. And so I always say, you're serving somebody on a platter. This is my message to you. Let me flavor it to your taste.
Oh,
and then let me give it to you, and then I want you to take it and sample it. But if I'm like, no, I have something else on the menu, and I'm rushing to get to it with my script, you're missing a potential lovely moment of energy and connection.
Yeah, I love that. So I touched briefly on body language earlier on. Tell me some of your favorite do's and don'ts and ideas around body language.
Well, I was laughing because I was thinking you should use the body. We underestimate how much that presentation is a full body sport, and so people think about it as coming from the throat to the mouth and out, and then maybe they use their hands. When you and I know that a little walk here and there, the use of the kinetic energy of the body, it can be overdone. But as long as you know that how to hold yourself, and you can convey all sorts of messages. You can convey dignity, you can convey solemnity, you can convey energy and innovation, just by how you use all of you. And so movement is and it should be worked with in terms of what's the content of my topic and of my subject, what's the context of the room I'm in, what's appropriate, and what am I comfortable with? Because you and I might be a little bit more animated than others.
Maybe, possibly. A little bit. Some may have said that.
Exactly. But that's because we have fun with it.
Yes,
and we understand that it energizes us, it energizes the audience.
That's so true.
And so I always say that I always exaggerate with my clients. I say, you're going to do with me in rehearsal a little bit more than is necessary, because I'm going to push you to gain comfort, so that then you have in your repertoire a place to go. That's a little bit further away than you started when you started working with us.
I love that so much. So I'm conscious of the time. We've got more coaching.
Between coaching sessions.
Between coaching sessions, the rest of my day is interesting. How fascinating.
Yes.
What else, is there anything else that you want to share with the Sasaga podcast listeners while we have them here listening to you?
I have one thing that I've been having reason to say a lot, and this is especially since COVID and post-Zoom and coming back to seeing people in person, which is that the internal voice that we give ourselves is critical. Because very often the critic is in our own ear, is us saying, that wasn't good, oh my God, I can't believe I misspoke, oh, what are they thinking of me? Where I would like to have everybody start their presentations, and before they even open their mouth, with saying, I'm fantastic.
Yes.
And I have something to share with the world, and it's interesting. And I can't wait to share it with them, and I'm going to be great at it.
Exactly.
And this self-talk is as much a part of the presentation as anything else we teach them.
Brilliant. I love that so much. Okay, so I'm going to finish off this little snippet by just showing some of the view that we have here for people who are watching on video. This will be cut out, and obviously you won't be able to hear the view, but I'm going to just do that while we have the camera. So thank you so much, Cathy. This was totally impromptu, and I was like, we have to grab this opportunity. And I think this, like, the value that has just come out of these, less than 15 minutes is massive. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we'll put in the show notes where people can contact you, learn more about you, follow you on Instagram and all of that stuff.
Thank you, my dear.
I
appreciate it.
Brilliant. So let me just grab the phone. We're recording this on a phone, not going any high tech. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of the gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous place that we are at. Isn't that wonderful? All right, so thank you so much for listening and watching, and make it a brilliant and joyful day. Bye bye.